So, Sophie, I want to introduce you to our spectators. I think they've seen one or two stories of you, but for those who don't know, you are the one. There is no one who's seen more, talked more, written more, and understands more of international women's football than you do. For the past 10 years, you've been doing the same thing as I did, just in a much, much better way, in a professional way, all over the world. I've been looking into Switzerland, but you are the one. No one knows more, has been in more meetings, has been inside more, well, not the locker rooms, I guess, but inside of more teams. Um, just quickly tell our spectators, how did you come about women's football, and what did you do for 10 years?
Well, I I was scrolling Twitter one day and I saw a sign from the BBC Sports saying that the second half of an England game was about to kick off, and I thought, not doing anything else, I'll watch that. And it was right before the 2015 World Cup, so I watched all the 2015 World Cup and just tried to learn as much as I could during that tournament about the teams, about the players. I remember Switzerland were there. I don't remember much of that World Cup, but I do remember Switzerland were there. And I just really just wanted to learn as much as I could because I didn't know much about women's football. So then I started writing about it, about blogging about it, going to games. First at home, obviously we've got WSL over here. We've got the second league as well, and I've got some local teams. And then I started getting really interested. Started traveling around Europe, went to some major tournaments, and I've in those 10 years, I've tried to tell the stories or inform people about things that are happening outside of England, things that maybe weren't being reported on in English. I try to be that kind of bridge for people. The last 10 years, we have seen the coverage really explode, expand, and there is so much more being said about players from around the world than just a decade ago.
Yeah, that's true. Do you remember the first time we met? I guess you don't.
In Scotland.
Yeah, it was in Scotland. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're three of us. We're three journalists. You, another lady, and me. And you had to leave because the Swiss national team would not bring anyone to the media room. It took them 2.5 hours, so you had to leave, and you said goodbye, and you were like, "Oh, yeah, well, I'm going." That was a
Yeah,
crazy game.
it was the penultimate qualifier for the 2019 World Cup, or was it the Euros?
Exactly,
That was the World
2019
Cup.
World Cup.
And yes, Scotland just gotten a result. So it went down to the last group game. And yeah, I had to leave because I had to get a coach back to London because I was flying to Reykjavik the next day for Iceland versus Germany. And I almost missed my coach.
Yeah, that was not nice of Martina Voss-Tecklenburg and her team to let us wait like that.
I had a few more run-ins with Voss Tecklenburg teams in mixed zones, but yeah, no, it happens.
Yeah, that was actually a crucial moment. If you've been looking at Switzerland for quite a while, I think missing that World Cup did us a lot of harm. What would you say in the long run?
I think I think Switzerland are a kind of a strange team, if you allow that. I think your players, for as long as I've been watching women's football, have always been better than the football they've produced. I think under every different manager you've had different reasons why you haven't played the best. And I look at like the Voss Tecklenburg era. I know she did so much for Switzerland, but I hated how you played under her. And it wasn't a surprise to see you kind of miss out then. And sometimes you need a reset, but you also need the right coach. And I don't know if you've ever had the right coach.
Yeah, I mean, this is a big discussion we're having here in Switzerland anyway, because now people are really turning on Pia Sundhag already. And to me, it's just, look, guys, we're looking at Martina Voss-Tecklenburg, Niels Nielsen, Inka Grings, now Pia Sundhag. Inka is the only one we can actually say she was a little less experienced than anyone else. It can't be just a coach. There must be something else also not working well. What do you reckon?
I think it's tough. trying to get the right coach for a team as well. I think sometimes people argue that you need a coach from your own country because there's something about how a team plays and understanding there. But we have seen plenty of coaches from other countries do well with different nations. I think you look over at like a Serbian Wiegman with England, obviously he's done so well, and a lot of people in England say, "Oh, you've got to be an English manager." But it's tough as well finding a coach, and sometimes you think about the contact time that coaches have in a national team as well. They don't get to see those players all the time, so it takes them a long time to try things out, realize they're not working. Sometimes it takes too long for that stuff. So it's a really tricky job to find the right person for. And yeah, I think from Switzerland have as well is maybe you've got a lot of talented players. You've had a lot of talented players over the years, but you maybe haven't had the depth that other nations have. So it's if you lose a key player sometimes, everything can fall apart as well, which doesn't help. But I'm not surprised people are turning against Mehr already, and it does happen wherever she goes. But she is massively experienced, and I think that was
Let's stay on
key.
that topic. So she's massively experienced, but what I think is maybe she's a little old school. And now we're getting into a generation of footballers that don't like the old school way. What do you think? How did that go about in Sweden, in Brazil, in the US with her?
I think, it's tricky. It's tricky because I think if you ask Americans, if you ask Swedes, if you ask Brazilians, there's always something different they're going to be upset about. I think a lot of managers can be quite idiosyncratic, and Peer is very Peer. You get 100% of Peer all the time, and sometimes that's a bit too much, and sometimes maybe it's her personality that can take away from what the team does. But yeah, maybe she's not always going to play the most interesting football. You're not always going to get the right kind of opportunities for younger players sometimes, depending on the squad you've got. She might lean into sort of old school ideas or formations. They're a bit stale. I think that's maybe a problem we have as well. And there was definitely sort of with Brazil as well, it was the feeling that you needed to be a Brazilian manager to really understand the samba football and the footballer's life for Brazil. But yeah, I think given when she came in, you've got the Euros around the corner. They needed someone experienced. They need someone who'd been there, who'd worked with massive players before, could deal with egos if that was a problem. I mean, all of it made sense as an appointment, but maybe you're not getting the best football at the end of the day, but you're getting something maybe more stable.
I think that is the key point that you're mentioning there. We did not know that we are not getting the best football. So maybe we should have asked you beforehand, because people were expecting her to give us gala football, the kinds the US were playing, or the Swedish national team around her town. Brazil will try to just put out of our minds, because we thought, well, maybe it just didn't work with them. But it seems to be. I mean, she's trying to force through a 5-3-2 that seems not to make anyone happy. She's putting the strikers as wing backs, and that leads to a lot of confusion. Also, big distance to the goal, so we get no attacking chances, and that just frustrates a little bit.
Yeah, I think you don't need to play five at the back. You're a better team than that. But the first few years of watching Switzerland, you had Anna Maria playing in the defense. So I'm used to sort of Swiss players out of position, but it feels like you've got the wrong formation, you've got sort of the wrong setup for the players you've got available, and that should be quite obvious.
I think the only one who actually tried to accommodate players with the system was Niels Nielsen, and I think he ended up losing that battle towards the end of the preparation for the Euros 2022, and then he actually switched for a better one, but he lost the locker room that tournament, because he then switched from being the nice guy to being the guy who wants results. and then the results ended up still not coming. And then he was in between, and then he actually made it through the playoffs, albeit in the last minute of stoppage time in the overtime. But he made it to the World Cup. He made it through the playoffs, but didn't even get to play the World Cup himself because he was just out of his depth.
Yeah, I think with Pia, even if the football is bad and the formation doesn't make sense, she's not out of her depth.
That is true.
So you get the experience, but you get it at a cost as well. I would hope that you're not playing so defensively in the group stage, because you've got some really winnable games in there, and it would be so much you can play expansive. You can actually let your best players, who are your attackers, really start to shine. But I don't know. Maybe Pia will continue to be.
I mean, it was a perfect segue. Let's get into the first game. So we've had two big trials against Norway in the Nations League. We've lost both games. Looking at Norway, where they are now, and at their squad, how do you reckon what do we need to look after, and what is the chances that Switzerland will have?
I think Norway are their worst enemies. Like Norway, if you want to beat Norway, you just let Norway get in their own heads. But I think it again, like you can look at the Norway team as has been for as long as I've been around. Norway's best players are their attackers. You've got Ada Hegerberg hopefully coming back into some of her best form, Karina Graham Hansen, and you've got like Elizabeth Turland coming in off a really good season with Man United. You've got some very good midfielders in there. So marking is probably your best way forward. Probably playing that defensive game in the first game, trying to reduce the space, because when you've got such good attackers like CGH, like other, they can make a lot happen. So it's about trying to reduce the space they've got and trying to find how you get through to their defense, because again, that's their weakest point. And you've got players, and it's a shame to not see Bachmann, her having just done her ACL. And I know Ramona Bachmann hasn't been at her best for a couple of years, but she still could have provided a little bit of magic going forward there. So.
I guess the playing between lines that we would have needed maybe against Norway, Ramona could have provided, but I think this tournament would have been anyway in a wrong moment for her. She just had a tough few months leading up to tournament, but also made some decisions that maybe weren't the smartest ones, like staying in the US, not trying to come home if she wanted to be home for mental health reasons, for stability, not looking for a team at home where she could at least get 1, 2, 3 matches in, because we all know the intensity from a game is much different than the things you can do on your own.
Yeah, I think I did say to someone at the time when the news came through that there are worse players for Switzerland to be without, and if this was 5-10 years ago, that really hurts Switzerland's chances. But it just becomes the fact that she is one of the better players that Switzerland has produced, and it's a shame that she doesn't get that chance to play a home tournament. And you never know. She's the type of player who can find those moments. But you've also got like Geraldine, you've got Sydney, who's shown some really nice moments at Barcelona. And like you've got a lot of players who have potential, and maybe you give them the platform. Sometimes you just need a tournament to really show yourselves off. And I think you've got some good young players who might be able in some moments to shine.
That's what we are hoping for. Let's stick with Norway just for a little longer. If we look at their roster and their squad, sometimes I get into those American words like roster. No surprises there. I think, as you say, top heavy. The attack is really what we need to look after.
Yeah, I think that's Norway haven't played their best football for a long time. I think they actually took a lot of confidence from beating for Switzerland, because they didn't have the best Nations League either. They're struggling. They've been struggling for a long time, but they brought in a really good manager in Granger, but it's still not quite clicking for them. So I think you're still getting a vulnerable Norway. Norway not at their best. And again, you can look at the players they've got, but for Norway, those pieces don't come together properly. They don't. It should be you've got this great player, this great player, this great player. You've got a great team. Generally, you just have quite a middling team, despite all that talent.
What shocked me the most and annoyed me a little bit was in the both games against Switzerland, they were looking for the goal, and once they got it, they shut play down. Do you think that could happen as well in the Euros?
I think so. I think when you look at the tournaments they've played under different managers, they've all been very disappointing. And the Norwegian players they talk that they can't play a certain way, that it doesn't matter, yes, and Carolina plays this way at Barcelona, but we're not Barcelona, and Ada does this and not, but we're not this team, and they talk about there being too much expectation on them from outside, with the history of the team as well. So I think you put that in and you look at sort of the tournaments they've played and how badly they've played. I think they you want to go back to basics, and sometimes that's trying to keep a clean sheet or just trying to see out a game, even if you don't need to be taking the ball to the corner with 20 minutes to play or whatever it is. I think they kind of get into their own heads. They get a little bit nervous. They get a little bit scared, and they try and just go back to basics and do really simple stuff like that, even if they don't need to. I think it's just kind of part of their own regrowth and trying to fix themselves.
You think that will work in a Euros opening game, or could the nervousness and maybe the eagerness of the Swiss lead us to the first 3 points? How do you look upon that game, which is in a week's time, 2 weeks? More than a week and a half time. 8 days.
I don't know why, but Norway keep being drawn into Group A of the tournaments. They played the opener in 2017. They lost narrowly in Utrecht. And then they were in Group A at the next Euros, and of course the last World Cup and everything, and the 2019 World Cup. They just keep playing. So I think they're used to playing the hosts as well at tournaments, and they're kind of used to that, being the small team up against the host and the 12th man and everything. So I think that they probably have the most experience of that of anyone at the tournament. But I don't know. I'm not sure how brave they're going to be. And if you do get sort of the swell of the crowd behind you, how that could affect the game. I mean, maybe not for Norway, but for the home players, if they start sort of feeling that confidence and that it really can push teams along. We saw it in 2017. We saw it in 2022. It can have an impact.
Well, let's hope for the impact that all the experience against the hosts doesn't help Norway. Further up, then we're moving to Bern, where Switzerland will play for the first time in their history for the women's team in Bern, in the national stadium. We're looking at Iceland. What do you know about Iceland, and what can you tell us about Iceland at these Euros?
Say Iceland are a very unlucky team when it comes to tournaments. Even if they have really great preparation, they don't get any luck at games. But I think that the problem Iceland have, maybe if you sort of people who aren't the most familiar with the Iceland squad, as they are other teams, they might know one or two players. And for Iceland, Iceland have a very good goalkeeper. They've got a very good centre back, very good attacking midfield, very good at. So they're sort of each third, they've got one very good player, but they don't have 11 good players, if you will, when it comes to Iceland. So I think your best chance against Iceland, as well, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, in the Nations League, there was a Carolina Lear hat-trick in Reykjavik.
Exactly.
Despite Switzerland. Switzerland were the better team by a long way, but boom, boom, boom. So if you can take Carolina Leah, if you can take Svendis Jonsdottir out of the game, if you can mark those players, you can really, really weaken the Iceland team because they rely on those two players to really get their attack going. And likewise, when you're attacking, if you can avoid Glodis at centre back, because obviously she's Bayern Munich centre back, she's a very good, very experienced centre back. So if you're mindful of their key players, I think there is kind of a passage through for teams playing.
So we kind of need to try to match our best players to their key players, trying to keep them in stock. The thing is, they have been coming at us in those two games with such dynamic, with speed and crosses, which our team just seems not to be able to deal with.
It's pretty basic dealing with that stuff, which is a bit of a red flag. But I mean, Iceland, you're getting a team that's going to be strong, is going to really try and use that. They're and I think people might say, oh, they're just a physical team, they're just this, that, just that. If you go to Iceland, if you watch them play, and you sort of spend a lot of time there, it's cold and it's windy, and they have to be strong to deal with just the elements. So it's not even about they're trying to be strong in their football. It's just that's how you have to grow up playing football, and you've got to be mindful of that when you play them. They're not Spain. They're not going to play really delicate football because they can't grow up playing that way. So when you know a little bit about sort of how teams come into football, how they learn, then it does help in trying to work out how to beat them. So, or just know how or what you're going to get.
You reckon this will be the key matchup in this group?
I want to say yes, but I also watched those Nations League games, so I'm not sure. It's a shame you don't have Finland first. I think that would have been sort of the best for Switzerland because that is the most winnable game on paper, and then you can sort of start to build up momentum. I think if you lose to a Norway, it gets you a bit nervous, and you're worried going into the next game. And sometimes you can be in your own head if you haven't started well. Whereas if you start with a win, it makes stuff so much easier.
Yeah, I mean, you're mentioning a very important point where I also think a lot of people think, Finland will be the resting game where you can rest until you face Spain or Portugal. Well, I don't think so. I think we will need those 3 points out of that game. What is Finland's strength? I mean, we know the goalkeeper. I don't know if she will be the number one. Korpela, she's been playing in Servette in Geneva. But other than that, we have no clue. Last time we faced Finland is like 8 years ago. So tell us about them.
I think Finland are quite a good team. I like some of the players they've got. I think people might know a player like Emma Koivisto. She was at Brighton, at Liverpool. Now she's playing for AC Milan. Another defender, Natalia Kuika, is playing in NWSL. So there are players kind of dotted around who you might know, but I quite like. There's a couple of Spurs players in there, Evelina Suominen and Olga Artinen. They're quite good in the midfield, and Jutta Rantala, who's just coming back from an injury, but again is quite a key player for them. If she's at her best, I think there are a few players at the tournament and in the group who maybe are a bit 50-50 when it comes to form and injury. I think Velti is a similar case that you want her in the team because you're better with her in the team, but coming in injured, you don't quite know what you're going to get. But I think Finland have some players, again, like Iceland, a little more on the physical side. And again, that's how you kind of grow up. And a lot of, I think all the Finland players, or most of the Finland players, I should say, do play outside of Finland. They've kind of graduated. They're playing in stronger leagues. And they're dotted around playing different styles. So then they're not a bad team. I think the last time we saw them at a major tournament, they weren't at their best. They had a manager who didn't really get the best out of them. They're playing better under their current manager, Marco. But I think it's very easy for everyone to target Finland and say, this is where we're going to get 3 points in this group. but they could surprise. They do have some players. You mentioned Timo Korpela, who has been around for so long in that Finland team, super reliable. At the other end of the pitch, you've got Linda Salzström, who is in her, I think, mid-30s by now, striker. Again, just very reliable, scores a lot of goals. But then they're not the youngest team. They might be a little bit slow sometimes. But I think they're not a team to be taken lightly either.
You think formation-wise, they could give us a little room for that 5-3-2 to move up or up the field, or do you think we'll have to look out for the same issues we would have against Iceland?
I think there's definitely room to drift away from five at the back. I would like to see you drift away from five at the back because it doesn't work for you. But yeah, I think the biggest thing just is to be wary of the midfield for Finland, because obviously that's where so much of the balance lies. So if you push up to say a 4 or 5 in midfield, that might be a little bit better, and then you can kind of match them, and you have a better chance in your transitions as well.
We'll surely get more into depth ahead of the games, but tell me, do you reckon we have real chances? What are we looking at here in this Group A?
I think of the 4 groups, everyone would have been wanting to be in Group A. Because I think you look at the other groups and you can definitely see at least one team who are getting out of it, if not 2 or 3 trying to get out. I think everyone in Group A will feel that they can get out, that they can score goals, they'll pick up points. I think it's a tough group for different reasons for that, because you don't have a clear favourite. And you could all just be picking points off of each other, and making for quite a frantic end to the group. But I think Switzerland have the same chance that Finland, Iceland, and Norway do. I think you're all kind of coming in some respects with blank slates, and as you do at any tournament, it's about 90 minutes. And it's a horrible start against Norway, because that should be the toughest game. That might not be the toughest game, but it should be. But you've got a fair chance. It's just about playing properly, playing to your strengths. But as we've said, you don't necessarily do that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really conflicted, because I think, looking at those past games in the Nations League, I think actually Iceland will be the toughest one, because Norway, if we can force them to keep in the game, then I think there is something to be done. And Iceland, I just felt twice like there was a cold shower running through us, and then we just got stuck into that. You look at the preparation of other teams and how they've been doing it. Switzerland's been taking a different road. We started with 36 players in the roster. Now, finally, today we got down to 23. Are we doing ourselves a disfavor on that?
You're not the only team that had an expanded roster. Italy as well. I think at this moment of recording, they haven't announced their final roster. Neither has Portugal. And it makes sense, especially, Pia hasn't been in the job that long. You want to make sure you've got that best team going in at the last moment, or, leave as late as you can. I know that you are a couple of players I might have expected to see aren't there. But I just think you're also quite fortunate with the Nations League. Whereas, if it was a normal qualification campaign, you wouldn't be getting competitive fixtures against strong teams. Nations League campaign, you've got competitive fixtures against the teams you're playing. Really strange draw. So I think you're quite fortunate in that respect, because otherwise you would be looking for friendlies for teams who aren't playing, that wouldn't be European nations. But I think it's tough, because I think people also look at England hosting the last Euros, winning it, the Netherlands before them winning it, and there might be that growing expectation if you're hosting, you've got to win, which is a bit mad.
if we want to win it, we need to come past the quarterfinals. It's Group B, Belgium, Italy, Portugal, Spain. I think if we take out Spain, it's the most evenly matched group of all. People are saying try to not become second, so you can avoid Spain, and then if you are first, you can play Portugal. What do you think? Are those two given?
I think Italy will finish second.
You think even before Belgium, because Belgium's been doing well lately.
Belgium has, Belgium actually recently beat England 3-2. Portugal is a strange team because they've had some good games, and then in their Nations League they had a strange game against Spain in Portugal, and then a couple of days later they played in Galicia, and they got absolutely hammered by Spain. And every game since they've just looked quite broken. So they quickly need to hit reset. But we saw them like at the World Cup last year. They almost knocked the US out. They might not be the flashiest team sometimes, but they do have a growing amount of experience. But yeah, I think we've seen Portugal and Belgium pull off some good results. Italy themselves have beaten Spain recently. Spain, I think we could have 2 hours talking about Spain and the mistakes they make and the mess that they're in. But Spain, unlike almost every other team, have a world-class starting 11 that sometimes just takes care of itself. But if something goes wrong for Spain, they can start to panic sometimes. So it's not set in stone, but no one wants to play Spain.
Well, yeah, let's see. Well, we'll see you again before those games, just to hear what you're gonna tell us more in depth about those teams and what you know about the game that will come facing us. Just before I let you head off, two Swiss national team players went to your home country. One to Chelsea, Livia Peng, and the other one, Iman Bonet, who's joined Manchester City. Just quick words about those teams and the chance of those girls to be actually playing.
Peng's going to sit on the bench. Well, I mean, we'll have to see with Bonpastor how much he wants to rotate. Chelsea at one point had a lot of goalkeepers, and then they seem to lose a few to other teams, to pregnancies, to this, that, and the other. But I think, like we see with England, Hannah Hampton is kind of the clear number one there. I hope Peng gets to play more. I really enjoyed watching her for Werder the last season. She looks a very good goalkeeper. Bernie, I have no idea. I would expect her to go on loan first and foremost. But we also don't know who the Man City coach coming in is, so we don't know how she's going to feature in terms of their plans. But Man City have quite a few young players who are struggling for time for minutes, so I wouldn't be surprised to see a loan out to somewhere I don't even know where she could, maybe like a loan to Germany or Sweden, something to get her minutes up, just keep her.
She's been rumored to join Paris FC before the Manchester City deal. That could be something, maybe.
Could well be a loan. That would be a good move for her. I think she'll get some time at Paris FC if we are talking that actually does come through. But yeah, I don't think she's going to play much. Peng, we might see some rotation in, and I hope we do because I know that Peng is ready to play.
That will be amazing for the Swiss girls. Well, so thank you. I'll release you into your London evening, into your British evening. I'll try to catch the last sunrise here in Switzerland. And I see you, I guess, on the 1st of July again.
I'll see you in July.
Thank you.